Hello viewers and learners. In the series of international relations theory, today I am going to discuss with you the Marxist theory of international relations. It is also one of the important contribution in the field of international relations. This lecture is divided into two parts. So in the first part I am going to discuss with some of the key premises of Marx and Marxist viewpoint regarding the functioning of the state. And in the second part, some of the observations or some of the innovations that they have done to analyze international relations from a different angle, from a different perspective. Now, if we compare Marxism or Marxist understanding of international relations, and if we compare it with realism and liberalism, then Marxist thought it presents a rather unfamiliar view of international relations. It resonates with those presented with the foreign news pages of our newspapers and magazines. It means what the Marxists have seen, it is basically the underlying currents, not what you can visibly see or what you can hear from the newspapers, magazines, etc. It is something different. Marxism is not only focusing on how a state is actually behaving, rather it is focusing on the structures of international relations and some of the underlying forces which are determining the structure or which are in a way conditioning the states to act in a particular manner in the structures. Marxist theories aim to expose a deeper underlying, indeed hidden truth of international relations, some of the unfamiliar events of world politics which are not common. For example, commonly we think about international relations and we see it from the perspective of wars, treaties, international aid operations, etc. According to Marxism, they all occur within certain structures which have an enormous influence on all those items. So what we see and what we hear about international relations or what we know about it, it is just the outward picture of it. Internally, there are certain structures, and these structures, they have lot of influence on the events that takes place within those structures. These are the structures of a global capitalist system. So Marxist scholars believe that global capitalist system, it largely determines the structure of international relations. Any attempt to understand world politics, it must be based on a broader understanding of the processes which operate within global capitalism. So if you want to understand the functioning of international systems, then you need to understand the processes within global capitalism. So without understanding capitalism, you cannot understand international structures, and without understanding international structure, you cannot understand why and how the states behave in a particular manner. Now, what are the structures and processes of global capitalist system? Marxist theorists are also discomforting, for they argue that the effects of global capitalism are to ensure that the powerful and wealthy continue to prosper at the expense of the powerless and poor. Here Marxist scholars emphasizes that the world is not equal. Countries are divided. Certain countries, they have lot of resources and they have lot of economic resources, and that is the reason that they are more powerful and influential. On the other hand, there are certain other countries which are not that rich, which are either developing or underdeveloping. And the rich countries or the powerful countries, they actually prosper at the expense of the powerless countries. So it is an unequal relationship at the international level. Marxist scholars also argued that there is gross inequality in the world. In fact, the world is hierarchically placed, and not just the world but all its structures and the countries or the units in the structure, they are sharing an unequal relationships. So they are not having equal powers, they are not having equal stature, and it is visible from many angles if we analyze the world. Marxist theorists also argue that the relative prosperity of the few is dependent on the destitution of the many. In Marx's own words, accumulation of wealth at one pole is therefore at the same time accumulation of misery, agony of toil, slavery, ignorance, brutality at the opposite pole. So if in certain part of the world countries are rich, countries are prosperous, or their people are living a good quality life, or they are having surplus amount of money to take care of their development or well-being, it is done or it is there because certain other countries are poor, and they are poor not because of their own reasons. They are poor because of the structure of international relations. For that we need to go back to history and explore. Now here, in order to understand that how even in 21st century there are gross inequalities in the world, there are certain tables. Now if you see the tables, they present a picture. These are recent tables. The source of these tables is World Inequality Report. It was published by IMF in 2022. So this table depicts two criteria, one income and the second is wealth. So if you see, then the poorest half of the global population barely owns any wealth at all, presenting just 2% of the total. In contrast, if you see the richest countries or the richest people in states, their number, if the 10% richest people, if you see, then their share in global wealth is approximately 76%. Similarly, even in terms of income, they are getting higher income. So the 10% people, they are getting more than 50% of incomes. And in terms of wealth, that number rose to 76%. So the world is grossly divided in terms of income and wealth. Now there is this another table. Again, the source is same, World Inequality Report by IMF 2022. So the data that it compiled, it is of 2021. This particular graph, it shows income inequality levels across the regions. So inequality, it varies across the region. So in the world, it is not same. And you can see that between Europe and which is comparatively more equal, then there are some most unequal regions like Middle East and North Africa, which is known as MENA here, Middle East and North Africa, and in between there are various other regions where the inequality levels between the rich and poor people is shown. In Europe, the top 10% income share, the top 10% people, those who are at the top in economic hierarchy, they have a share of around 36%, whereas that number rose to around 58% in case of Middle East and North Africa. In between these two levels, we see that there is a lot of diversity and there are various patterns. In East Asia, the top 10% make 43% of total income, and in Latin America, around 55%. So it shows, all these graphs shows that how the world is not equally divided, and across regions, the top 10% people, they are owning more number of wealth, and they are generating more amount of money through incomes, and there are gross inequalities within states and at the international level across regions. Marx himself wrote copiously about international affairs. Most of his writings was generalistic in character. So Marx did not focus on international affairs much. His primary focus was on theorization of Marxism. He did not incorporate the international dimension into his theoretical mapping of the contours of capitalism. Marx was enormously prolific writer, and his ideas developed and changed over time. So it was not that Marx's ideas were static. Hence, it is not surprising that his legacy has been open to numerous interpretations. So future generation writers, they have tried to interpret it, what Marx has said, or the foundation that has been laid by Marx. So they have interpreted that under different circumstances and at different point of time. A variety of schools of thought have emerged over the period of time which claim Marx as a direct inspiration, or whose work can be linked to Marxist legacy. Now here there are some of the key things which are highlighted by Marx to analyze the behavior of the state. So first you need to analyze it internally. Only then you can analyze that why a state behaves in a particular manner, or why its condition is not equal to other countries in the international structure. So social world, Marx argued that social world, it should be analyzed in totality. Marx argued, or Marxist scholars, they argued that all theorists agreed with Marx that the social world, it should be analyzed in totality, as a totality. The academic division of social world into different areas of inquiry, or different streams of inquiry, or different disciplines of inquiry, such as history, philosophy, economics, political science, sociology, international relations, etc., is both arbitrary and unhelpful. So here the primary emphasis of Marxism is that we should see we should see social world in totality, because all the disciplines are interrelated, and without understanding all the disciplines in a comprehensive manner, you cannot understand the dynamics of any one particular discipline. Here again, Marxist scholars, they have given a lot of importance to economics, because they believe that economics determines the character of many other disciplines and the discourses within those disciplines. None can be understood, so Marxist scholars believe that none can be understood without the knowledge of others. The social world, it has to be studied as a whole. And in the current academic discourse also, sometimes we see this kind of a demand that there should be an interdisciplinary approach whenever we try to understand the disciplines of social sciences, because these disciplines are interrelated. So the same thing was highlighted by Marx and Marxist scholars way back. For Marxist theorists, the disciplinary boundaries that characterizes the contemporary social sciences need to be transcended if we are to generate a proper understanding of the dynamics of world politics. So you have to transcend the boundaries of social science, or the various disciplines of social science, if you want to have a comprehensive, better, or in-depth understanding of the dynamics of world politics. Another important contribution of Marxism is the materialist conception of history. The central contention here is that the processes of historical change are untimely a reflection of economic development of society. Marx gave a materialist interpretation of history. In that materialistic interpretation of history, Marx and his followers, they have acknowledged that it is the material forces that determines the historical character, or that determines the historical forces. Material production, according to them, is the main driving force of history. So if you want to go back in history and analyze, for example, say a particular society or its political systems or the social dynamics or exchange, you will find that ultimately they are all connected to the material forces. So who owns material forces, or who controls material forces in the society, it largely determines its history. The central dynamic that Marx identifies is the tension between the means of production and relations of production that together form the economic base of a given society. So what kind of means of production are there? It means the nature of the means of production. Who's the class that is controlling or that is managing those means of production? And what kind of relationship those means of productions are generating with the rest of the members of the society. Largely these two things, it determines the economic base of any given society. As the means of production develop, for example through technological advancement, previous relations of production become outmoded, and it leads to a process of social change whereby relations of productions are transformed. So as you have seen that because of globalization, a lot of changes has come in the economic systems around the world. So how economies perform, or how they operate, or how production takes place in various industries, it passed through a lot of transformation because of technological advancement. Globalization has also played an important role in determining the terms of exchange, and all these things, they have an impact on the relationship between the forces of production and the forces of production and those who are indulged on in those producing activities. Marx has also given the base and superstructure theory, which is again quite important contribution of Marxism. It also helps us to understand the behavior of state in international politics. According to this theory, developments in the economic base act as a catalyst for the broader transformation of society as a whole. This is because, as Marx argues in the preface to the contribution to the critique of political economy, the mode of production of material life conditions the social, political, and intellectual process in general. So the base and superstructure theory, it gives an hypothesis that economic forces or the material forces, they act at the base level of any society. Whosoever dominates the base, or say the material forces in any society, they will determine the character of its political institutions, social institutions, culture, etc. It means that they are interrelated, and superstructure, in a way you can say, is dependent on the base. So whosoever controls the base, they will also dominate the superstructure, and whatever is the nature of the base, it also determines the nature of the superstructure. Economic forces of production and economic relations of production operates at the level of base that determines everything, including the political structure, ruling class, nature of institutions, processes, art, religion, social relations, or even culture. So in any society, you can take the example of American society or any other Western countries, whosoever operate or whosoever dominate the base or whosoever control the material forces in the society or whosoever form the powerful economic class of that society, all other institutions in that society, so whether it is their politics or various political parties or their ideologies or the nature of their ruling class, even the political structure, right, the nature of the institutions, they are all determined by the base. And that is the reason that sometimes we say that it is the economic class that dominates democracies. There is also one, that elitist theory of democracy, that also believes in the same, that it is the economic elites or elites of a society that actually dominates or run democracies. And it is not just the nature of their political institutions, but all the processes, interestingly even art, religion, or the kind of social relations that people enjoy in a society, or the overall culture, cultural institutions, they are all getting influenced by the forces, by the material forces or the economic forces that operate at the level of base. In a way, we can even say that the rich people or the economically influential, powerful class, they determines the overall character of a state. Marx also argued that there is a mechanical causality between the base and superstructure. Feudalism or feudal economic order, it got changed from medieval Europe, and capitalism and modernity, it has replaced it. Apart from that, the global civil society, which is again an innovation, a new innovation in 18th century, it is also a part of capitalistic modernity. So all these things, that we are discussing about base and superstructure and the kind of changes which are coming, the changes which are coming in their society, or the changes which are coming in their culture, or the changes which are coming in their art, or new kind of institutions which are emerging in their societies, they are coming up because of the changing relationships and the changing nature of the forces that are dominating the base. So there are certain gradual changes that comes in different societies, and the way those changes came in the societies, you also see such kind of changes. For example, suppose if one particular economic class replace another class, right? Then you will also see a change in the patterns of various institutions and how those institutions operate in the society. The next important thing that was highlighted by Marx is the role of class. Class plays a key role in Marxist analysis. In contrast to liberals who believe that there is an essential harmony of interest between various social groups, Marxist scholars believe that society is systematically prone to class conflict. So here Marxist scholars are having a more pragmatic attitude towards the classes, and they are like quite emphatically saying that class conflict is something which you just can't avoid. It is imminent. On the other hand, if you talk about liberal scholars, they believe that since both of them are part of the same economic system, here I am talking about the working class or the business class, they must be having some essential harmony, or their interest at certain level converge. In the Communist Manifesto, which Marx co-authored with Engels, it is argued the history of all hitherto existing societies is the history of class struggle. In capitalist society, the main axis of conflict is between the bourgeoisie class, or say the capitalist class, and the proletariats, or say the workers. Marx has even said that all the workers of the world, they must united. It means that this class struggle is not limited to any one particular society or state. It is something which will be there. It is something that you can't avoid, you can't ignore. And that struggle is bound to happen. That struggle is something which is natural. Marx argued that philosophers have only interpreted the world in various ways, but the point should actually be how to change it. So Marx here committed himself to the cause of emancipation. So Marx was not there just to analyze certain things or just to interpret certain things in a different from a different perspective. Rather, his primary objective, his primary purpose was to change the system, or to work for the cause of emancipation, to break the structure and to bring a new structure that will be more egalitarian, more equal, more judicious in nature. So, when we go by this Marxist analysis, they said that class is something, or class conflict is something that is key to that is the key within an economic system, and it is not just within an economic system but around the world also. These classes, they determines the character of the state. For example, if we talk about the Western countries, who are dominating the Western states? So if you see their economic class or the division of their economic classes, it is the rich people and their interest. All these things, or their hunger for more and more material goods, industrial revolution, etc., they have, in a way, we can say, influenced them or motivated them to look for some markets, right? So all the colonial empires that they have built, they have been built because of the kind of structures which were present in their societies, and the kind of inequalities also, or the clashing interest also. We can even say that it is the economic interest within certain states that motivated or ultimately compelled those states to make others their colony, exploit them for their economic benefits, right? And it ultimately leads to world wars. So this division or this competition between colonial powers for more wealth, more prosperity, more territory, it leads to war, and ultimately the entire world, they have to face the negative consequences of those wars. So, going by Marxist analysis, we can say that class also played a very, very important role because class denotes here the economic category, right? Economic category within a society. So, class here played a very, very important role in determining not just the internal division or the internal functioning of a system, but also it plays an important role at the external level, at the global level. Thank you.